Okay, so you look at the phase one. Okay, let's look at phase one. So phase one is the resting potential. Okay, so what we can actually make sure that to maintain the resting potential, basically based on two mechanisms. The first mechanism is the sodium potassium pump, the active transport of the three sodium ion out and bring in two potassium ions, as well as the membrane permeability. The membranes of the neurons have higher permeability to the potassium ions compared to the sodium ion. So more sodium ion actually move out of the cells compared to the potassium ion. More potassium ion move out of the cell compared to the sodium enter into the cells. Okay, so at this moment during the phase one, the resting stage or resting potential, so we say that membrane is polarized, and we particularly zoom into this voltage gated sodium ion channel and voltage gated potassium ion channel. Then you can see that both of them, they are closed. Okay, so during resting potential, both of them, they are closed. Okay, so therefore no entry of sodium ions or leak out of the potassium ions. Okay, so membrane potential maintained at negative 65 millivolts. Okay, so when there is a stimulus, then you can see that the actual potential, okay, will be generated, provided that the receptor potential can reach this threshold value. So at the phase number 2 here, the second phase, we call it as a slight depolarization, characterized by the entry of the sodium ions, increase the membrane potential, and the increase in the membrane potential cause some of the voltage gated sodium ion channel to open, allow extra sodium ions to enter. So the entry of the sodium ions continue to depolarize the membranes. So therefore, the membrane potential now become less negative until they reach negative 50. Once it reach the threshold value or threshold potential at negative 50, what will happen here is all voltage gated, okay, all voltage gated sodium ion channel open. So therefore, the phase is characterized by the massive influx or rapid influx of the sodium ions from the tissue fluids into the neurons. So you can see that they turn, because so many positive ions enter, you can see that now there is a shoot up, okay, rapid. Can you see that this the gradient is so steep? Can you see that? Because it's a rapid influx of the sodium ion due to all voltage gated sodium ion channel open. The entry of the sodium ions now generates this, what we call the action potential. So it's something like a light. Okay, look at the signal, Morse code or lamps. Okay, the lights. Okay, so look at this. When we want to have a signal, you cannot like this. Continuously like this is not a signal. You won't feel it is a signal. But if you're on and off, on and off, on and off. So this on, off, it gives us the signal, which we call as the action potential. So what's on, off? So from negative to positive, and then from the positive, we want to revert it back to negative. Can you see that? Positive, revert back to negative. So the series of action make this from the negative 65 all the way to positive 40, and then from positive 40 go back to negative. This is one action potential. So at phase number 3, we term it as a rapid depolarization, characterized by the massive or rapid influx of the sodium ions from the tissue fluids into the neurons. Okay, and it will cause the membrane potential to increase from negative 50 all the way to positive 40. And at positive 40, what happens here is all voltage gated sodium ion channel immediately close. Okay, so it means that no matter how, you won't be able to shoot up more than positive 40, because immediately at positive 40, all voltage gated sodium ion channel close. Okay, but at the same time, you can see that potassium voltage gated potassium ion channel open allows the potassium ion to move out of the cells. Because of move out of the cells means that inside the cell lack of losing, okay, the process of losing of these positive ions. Therefore, from positive 40 now decrease, the membrane potential now decrease from positive 40 all the way until negative 65. So at negative 65, right, at negative 65, what happened here is, by right, our voltage gated potassium ion channel should close, but they close slowly. When they close slowly, what will happen here is we have extra potassium ion actually move out from the cells into the tissue fluid. So the extra potassium ion move out. With this extra potassium ion move out, you can see that now the membrane potential is lower than the resting potential. Are you clear? So this part we term it as the hyperpolarization. Okay, so we have the repolarization, continue with the hyperpolarization. Once it reach a certain value, then when this O, okay, when this O voltage gated potassium ion channel close, then it stop, and then our sodium potassium pump and also the membrane permeability will revert everything back, restore everything back to the resting potential. Okay, so complete one cycle of the this generation of action potential. Clear? So now look at this, the first part, polarization, which is the resting potential at -65. You can add in here -65 millivolts. So what happened here is voltage gated sodium ion channel and voltage gated potassium ion channel, all of them close. So what are the events? So sodium potassium pump and the differential membrane permeability to the potassium and sodium and potassium maintain the resting potential. Okay, so two methods, sodium potassium pump and also the difference permeability and membrane permeability. So then continue with the slight depolarization at phase number 2. In the slight depolarization, voltage gated sodium ion channel, not all, some of them open, but we do know that voltage gated potassium ion channel at this moment still remain closed. So what are the events that actually take place? When the stimulus reaches a resting neurons, so some voltage gated sodium ion channel in the stimulated regions of the neurons membranes open, resulting in the movement of the sodium ions into the neurons by fascicular diffusion down the gradients. So the initial influx of the sodium ion is slow. So neuron membrane is said to become slightly depolarized. It's slightly only depolarized. Okay. So from -65, maybe become -63, -62, until they reach a threshold value, which enter into the phase number 3, which is termed as rapid depolarization, where all voltage gated sodium ion channel open, voltage gated potassium channel still remain closed. This only happens when the potential difference or membrane potential reach the threshold value or threshold potential, either threshold value or threshold potential of -50 millivolts. Okay, then many more or even all voltage gated sodium ion channel open. So when more gates open, allowing more sodium ions to move into the cells, resulting in the further depolarization. So this rapid influx of sodium ion leads to the sudden increase in the electrical potential or potential difference until they reach -40 millivolts. So this is a positive feedback mechanism, right? So it's a negative feedback mechanism, basically increase, then we bring it down. But no, when it increase, we bring it even higher. So this is an example of positive feedback mechanism. So once you reach the positive 40, become positive 40, my mistake here, guys. Positive 40, okay? Right, again, here, positive 40. So this is an example of positive feedback mechanism. Once they reach this positive 40 millivolts, what will happen here is immediately voltage gated sodium ion channel, all of them close, and voltage gated potassium ion channel all open. So it's a reversal of the electrical potential difference from positive 40 millivolts down to -65 millivolts. Due to what? Due to the openings of the voltage gated potassium ion channel, allowing potassium ions to move out of the cells down the electrical potential gradient or concentration gradients. Okay, so now we say that membrane is repolarized now. Okay, repolarize the membrane. So this membrane potential straight, right, from positive 40 go all the way down to -65 millivolts, correct or not? And then what will happen next is we're going to have the hypopolarization. Again, we have the voltage gated sodium ion channel remain closed, but voltage gated potassium ion channel close slowly. So when they close slowly, so means that we have an excess K plus ion leave the neurons. Therefore, you can see that the voltage or membrane potential falls slightly below -65 millivolts, and we term it as hypopolarizations. Okay. So any questions so far? So now, what is mean all or none principle? So all or none principle actually state that no matter how strong the stimulus, whether I touch you or I slap you, the maximum that the peak here, the maximum peak that we can have will be positive 40. Are you clear? So here, please change the diagrams. Okay, so this one, change it to positive 40. Okay, so no matter how the highest, the peak, the magnitudes here, the magnitudes always positive 40. So you need to know what is the reason. What is the reason that even though we have a very strong stimulus, why we cannot move more than positive 40? The reason here is because at positive 40, all voltage gated sodium ion channel close. So means that there is no extra sodium ion actually enter into the neuron. So therefore, you won't be able to continue to increase the voltage or membrane potential. Okay, another one, threshold value, put it in negative, write down negative 50 millivolts, and resting potential in our syllabus is negative 65 millivolts. Okay, negative 65 millivolts. So what's mean all or none principle? Now, our neuron is set up in such a way that we don't want to receive all information without filter. If let's say every signal that we receive will be sent to our brain, what will happen here is, try to imagine your body currently are bombarded by so many air particles. If every air particle bombards on your skin will give us a touch sensation, our brain will be exhausted. Can you see that? So those very, very tiny or very, very light or very, very low intensity or low strength of the stimulus, it will cause, can you see that? Initially, this part, okay, we have the receptor potential. Later, when we discuss the receptor, I will tell you more about receptor potential. So you can see that there is slight increase. But if the increase here, because the stimulus is not strong enough, when the stimulus is not strong enough, so this receptor potential cannot reach the threshold. Okay, the skin receptor, right? Okay, so cannot reach the threshold. So when it cannot reach the threshold, what will happen here is, you try to imagine, we want to add the positive ion into the neuron, but the sodium potassium pump out the sodium ion. So sodium ion enter, and then sodium ion is pumped out because it's not strong enough. So the entry is so weak until our sodium potassium pump out the sodium ion. So we want to increase, but sodium potassium pump out the sodium ion. So therefore later we can see that we go back to resting potential. So means that no action potential is generated. It's good because you try to imagine if a minute signal will be sent to your brain for interpretation, we won't be able to rest, confirm. You try to imagine your ear. Every single, a very, very soft sound, voice, it can actually cause you to interpret it, to send to the brain. But if the signal, again, the resting potential, okay, and then if the signal is strong, means that we can achieve the threshold value. The receptor potential can achieve a threshold value. Then immediately we're going to have a rapid depolarization followed by repolarization, and one action potential is generated. And this action potential will be received by our brain and interpreted later. Are you clear? Can you see that? So this one action potential is generated. So I will say that all or none principle. So all or none principle. So all or none principle say what? A single nerve fiber or nerve neurons will always give a maximum response and produce a spike of the same amplitude or magnitude when stimulated. So it means that when we need to have action potential, definitely the height will be always positive 40. It won't be more than that. Why? Because at positive 40, instantaneously, our voltage gated sodium ion channel closed. So therefore, you cannot add more sodium ion into the cells. So when there is no adding of the sodium ions, definitely you won't be shoot up higher than positive 40. Are you clear? Okay. But why decrease? The decrease is because of the leakage of the potassium ions, right? Due to the openings of the voltage gated potassium ion channel. So no matter how, everything will look alike. Are you clear? So it means that it's something like light intensity, always give you that. You can see that the blue color, it won't change to darker, even though how strong I press. But every signal will give a code to our brain. Okay, every signal. So it's something like Morse code. Can I see that? 1, 1, 1. So every time you have the signal, so this signal will be interpreted by our brain later. Okay, so in short, the propagated impulse in the single fiber cannot be graded by grading the intensity or durations of the stimulus. Okay, so the nerve fiber only give us a maximal response or none at all. Okay, none at all basically means that the stimulus is very, very, very big stimulus. So it means that you won't be able to achieve the threshold value. Therefore, you won't have the action potential. Okay. So with this, I've done for the generations of the action potential.